Hey y'all, it's time to put diplomacy back into the public square, where differences don't have to mean discord. My name is Chris Brown. I'm a pastor, former Goldman Sachs wealth manager and financial planner. And y'all, I just might lose my manners. But that's okay, as long as I'm minding my manner. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Minding My Manner podcast. I'm your host, Chris Brown. I told you before, I'm a pastor, financial planner, former Goldman Sachs advisor, certified financial planner certificate. I'm here to talk about the intentionality of life. I got my broski with me, Jaeden Cruz. We came up through the ranks together with Goldman Sachs. Jaeden, why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself?
Sure, man. I mean, we work together at Goldman Sachs. Right now, I'm a private banker. I grew up in good old Scranton, Pennsylvania, for all of you Office fans. But you know, just a young guy going through life, man. I'm just a human being.
Man, you're not just going through life, man. You're making a path through life. And one of the things I really enjoy about you is you think a little bit differently than me, man. So when I thought about, who do I want to come in and talk about life with me and how to be intentional about making your way through life, I thought about somebody who challenges my thoughts, views, and opinions. Because I think in today's world, we kind of live in these cultural silos, right? In which we stay with the people who make us comfortable. We stay with what's familiar. And all those things make us feel comfortable, but aren't necessarily, beneficial for our growth, who we are as people, where we're going, where we're headed. So, the point of this podcast is to help to challenge folks about why do you think the way that you're thinking? How is the way that you're thinking actually helping you and aiding where you're going in life? Or is how you think about things, is that actually causing, barriers towards your growth as a person in your career, for your family and establishing your family, your romantic life? All those different types of things are important. And if we're actually going to make way, why not do it intentionally, straightforward, on purpose instead of by accident? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's what Minding My Manner is all about. Is about living life on purpose and eliminating all those other things that get in our way. So that's what I want to bring to the audience. I'm looking forward to y'all being on this journey with me as we mind our manners. And let me clear this up. There's no S, because sometimes you got to lose your manners in order to mind your manner. So sometimes it means being rude and sticking up for people and advocating and all those things that make sure that you can stay on your course for life and the vision that you have for your life. And sometimes that means people are going to get hurt. People are going to get upset. So let's just talk about that conversation we were just having.
Sure, man.
Harry Potter.
Absolutely.
Episode 7.
Part 1.
Part 1 is
boring.
It's boring. It's probably the worst. I don't know if it's the worst Harry Potter. The first 2 Harry Potters, I think, were like okay. They were like
1 and 2.
Like 1 and 2.
No, they're amazing. Those are.
You think they're amazing?
They're like nostalgic.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
The mood.
The
in
books
1
were
and 2.
becoming movies.
Yes.
Like there's a cultural phenomenon that's going on. That's a part of that. And like I guess maybe your expectations aren't so high because there's already so many books, right?
Also, the mood.
Yeah.
Is light.
Yeah.
It's lively.
Yeah.
There's kids.
Yeah.
It's like, look at all this magic stuff happening.
That's right.
And I was talking with Kara, they must have like changed directors, like creative visions halfway through.
Well, Dumbledore did die.
He died, but
the actor.
Literally everything in the last five, 6 is dark. It's like it's like a
absolutely
scary movie.
Yeah, it does.
And the first 3 are like,
yeah, it does.
Kids with magic.
Yeah. So it makes you wonder whether or not you bring if this was 2010, whether or not you bring your 6-year-old to see Deathly Hallows.
Yeah. I think you also, you might have a strong opinion. I would compare the first episode or the first Deathly Hallows to Dune.
What?
Dune #1.
What?
How boring that movie is.
You're
that's
ridiculous.
I know it.
What?
I do. That movie
What?
is so boring. I actually put that movie on
Bruh.
before I need to go to sleep.
Bruh, I'm about to
Helps
kick you
me
off.
sleep.
I'm about to kick you off.
No,
We
I
just
knew-
started. We just started. What the heck? Dune Part 1 is an amazing movie.
If you love,
If there was no Part 2, it would have already been amazing and a
it
masterpiece.
turned me off. I didn't see Part 2. I didn't see it.
Part 2 is ridiculous.
It made me so.
Part 2 is a
never
ridiculously
wanna-
good movie. So,
And now I can make you feel like this.
I am a bit unsettled now.
I could tell.
I'm a bit unsettled, and I don't know if that's fair. I don't know if you did a fair thing to me. So
good.
we're gonna move on to a segment that I call "You Can't Say That."
Okay.
Okay, which is actually what you did. You can't say that. Okay, don't say it about Dune.
I'm sure there's a ton of Dune fans out there. That's what I'm trying to do. But
it was interesting. Where this is being recorded right before the election. What's today's date? November 2nd.
I think.
So we haven't hit the election yet, but this past week there was a rally at Madison Square Garden. I'm sure you're familiar. There was a comedian, Heathcliff?
Tony Hinchcliffe.
Tony Hinchcliffe, yeah. So
Great comedian. I love Tony Hinchcliffe.
Yeah, and I hear his whole shtick is like making fun of people, and like that's a big part of what his thing is.
Well, he has a show called Kill Tony.
Yeah,
where he gathers a panel of comedians.
Mm-hmm.
They go on stage and they're all just sitting up there like judges, and they'll have like people who want to be comedians
Mm-hmm.
or people just like randomly off the street,
right,
come up on stage,
yeah,
and do 60 seconds of a stand-up set,
right.
And then if they're good, they'll all make fun of them. And if they're bad, they'll all make fun of them. He's a comedian.
So it's good. Yeah. So I mean, like his whole thing is, kind of built into who he is and what he does is essentially about creating, I guess, a lighthearted atmosphere around roasting.
Did you see him he was on the roast of
Tom Brady?
Tom Brady.
Yeah.
His roast was literally the best. He took the mic, got up on stage, and went down the line,
Yeah.
roasted everybody to their face.
Yeah.
It was literally the best. The best.
Yeah. So the boy has skills.
He's good.
And so he's a roaster.
He's a roaster.
But apparently he gets on stage at this Trump rally, and apparently to his own admission, they had just done the Star Spangled Banner or something like that, something very patriotic.
He had to fall. Yeah,
And now he's following up the Star Spangled Banner and begins to do his whole roast thing. And so there are a couple comments that caused a bit of a stir.
Yeah.
In the nation. So he talked about his friend in the audience, his black friend. Mm-hmm. Reminded me of when Trump said, "Oh, there's my African American over there." But he then proceeded to talk about, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go chop up some watermelon later." So because the black people in watermelon apparently. But so that may have been funny to some. Some might have been offended. But he had this one particular comment where he said, there's a floating island. We literally have a floating island of garbage out there. Did you all know that? And he says it's called Puerto Rico. And how that landed for people was, I think, in some ways, bad taste. What do you? So I'll just say from my standpoint, understanding even that he does roasting.
Yeah.
Right. Understanding the context in which we're living, where you're at in terms of just having come off the Star Spangled Banner. You are at a presidential rally. This constituency of Republicans needs a Hispanic and Latino vote. And he's loose-lipped enough. And in fact, this probably would have been scripted. I would imagine he would have submitted all these things, or he himself would have known. This probably wasn't off the cuff.
Yeah, probably.
and he makes that kind of comment. Now for me, Tony, you can't say that, okay? Primarily because when you, as a white person, now label an island of people who look different than you, who are of an oppressed class, when you call that island garbage, you liken the people on the island to garbage. So that's where my thought and background goes as someone who is from a historically oppressed people group.
Sure.
That's the meaning that's associated with what that statement is saying. Now, I know that there are going to be some Puerto Ricans that probably don't have as much issue with it, where they would say, oh, yeah, that's definitely a bad joke. But what's your thoughts on it?
I can 100% see how you would think that way. How he's like disparaging a whole group of people and calling them trash, right?
Yeah.
Like, I could see how people think that. In my opinion, they should have never had Tony Hinchcliffe at a rally in politics where everybody, and not to say where everybody's a little bit more serious.
Sure.
Everybody's a little bit more uptight.
Yeah.
People are taking things a lot more seriously because people generally believe that a lot is at stake, whether that's true or not, because, we have a presidential election every 4 years.
Right.
Happens all the time. They just should have never had him going out there knowing his context, because people who like comedy and people who don't take everything so seriously, especially the people who just take things seriously around election time.
Exactly.
They just shouldn't have had him up there. But I think the joke is funny. And I think
you think it was funny in the context in which he gave it was funny.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious. I think
as a Dominican, you thought it was funny.
As a Dominican, I thought it was funny. I think also I thought it was more funny because I didn't even realize that Puerto Rico had a trash problem. Like, they actually have an issue with trash and with we're like literally piling up, nowhere to put it. I didn't even know that going into the joke, and I still thought it was funny before. Plus, I think jokes that make fun of other people, like, I can stand it. It's like, it's not like, oh my God, that's so, I'm not offended. I think making fun of other people, I think I'm closest with people, the people I'm closest with, if I'm not making fun of them, it's a little off.
Yeah.
So I just have a different opinion about that. But I do think that, especially with when he was up telling that joke, when you heard him finish, you heard the crowd go, like, people were uncomfortable with it because you're at a Trump rally, you're not at the comedy club. It's just know your audience.
Context matters.
That's it. Yeah.
Packaging matters. And so, I just think, like, regardless of whether or not the joke is funny, he can't say that, especially then. Like, there's too much going on.
He can't say that ever?
I don't. So, I mean, he could probably say that in his clubs with his constituency. Like, I wouldn't be supporting a Tony Ratcliffe. Is that right? Hinchcliffe. I wouldn't be supporting a Tony Hinchcliffe on the Kill Tony podcast or show. I probably wouldn't watch it, especially now because of his comment.
Who's your favorite comedians?
My favorite comedians?
Yeah.
Oh man, just kings of comedy. Just go back with the originals.
Who?
So who's that? Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, D.L. Hughley, and then put Martin Lawrence in there. Martin is great.
Do you think
Eddie Murphy? I don't know what happened to Eddie Murphy, but he toned down a lot over the years in terms of like his pure comedy.
Some of those guys, have probably said some things that are kind of outrageous.
Hey, I agree
because they're comedians, right?
Yeah, sure. No,
right.
I absolutely agree. I do think it's different when it's coming from different groups of people. Who's delivering the joke does matter as well.
That's fair.
Yeah.
He says a lot worse things. Don't watch Kill Tony.
Yeah.
Don't watch Kill Tony.
Yeah.
Like, he'll say way worse stuff.
So, so some people just may have to stay away from certain kinds of comedy because it could really impact their psyche. But let's go on to kind of our deeper segment today. So that was a good kind of nosedive into like our cultural paradigm and where we're at as a country. Well, one of the things, I guess the bigger topic that I wanted to discuss today was something that we're kind of intimately familiar with regards to how we interact and engage with our clients. And it's kind of what drives our whole economic system. And that's, capitalism and consumerism.
Yep.
And so, capitalism is all about free markets, that the people own products, are able to pay for services, able to take ownership and autonomy within the driving of all the economic factors and markets and those different stuff. And government has as little hands-on as possible. But as a result, what drives then a capitalistic economy is, there's no other kind of way to say it, greed. People's desire for more. A capitalistic society doesn't work without a more sensibility. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you.
Yeah. So companies have to drive profits. Companies have to expand. There has to be expansion. Expansion is a fundamental and rudimentary part of what capitalism is. Mm. The hard part about capitalism is when the focus is on expansion and growth, guess what? People get run over with a bus in order to get there. And so for the sake of the growth of enterprise, the growth of overall economy and GDP, a purely free market would run over people. And we see this bearing out in terms of wealth gap, in terms of income gap. We saw in the pandemic, people who had certain levels of income, their income grew.
Yeah.
While other people who had certain levels of income, their income was stagnant because they weren't in a particular career or they hadn't achieved a particular type of status within a career pathway. What do you think about greed being the primary driver behind our economy and our society?
Yeah. I think I don't know, like, just trying to think about this right now, I'm not sure it's greed.
Okay.
Like, I feel like saying that greed runs capitalistic economies is kind of cynical. I think there are greedy people, for sure. Mm-hmm. Like, but I also think that, and this is coming from, like, my opinions on capital. I'm not an economist, and I only know from growing up in a capitalist society. I've never lived anywhere else, but I feel like capitalism is just aligning incentives, right? It allows for the economy to run freely, and it allows people to operate at their highest level of efficiency because there is incentive to do so, because they will be rewarded for their efforts. Mm-hmm. And it allows people from the lowest socioeconomic rungs of society, even if it's more difficult, right? Even if they have obstacles, even if they come from, disadvantaged backgrounds, they still can rise up through effort. And I feel like from my background, my family, background, coming from a single mother who was, on government benefits for a very long time, and us not having the greatest economic upbringing, and still being able to talk to you today in your beautiful home, and like in a nice neighborhood, and me having a great job, and and still moving forward. That's just my experience, because I haven't known anything different. And I don't know what an alternative would be. Like, I can't see. Yeah. And when I think through that, right? When I think through, all right, what's the alternative? The government is providing
Yeah.
everybody with what, money, or
Yeah.
is it how, like, what are they giving everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Are they giving everybody purpose?
Yeah.
Are they giving everybody the drive to pursue their dreams in the field that they want and provide for their family and be able to buy multiple properties and be able to, you know, go climb the corporate rungs and start their own business? Like, what is the government going to give people in the alternative? I just can't. I haven't thought through that yet. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
And it's good. Well, it's not so. I think the challenge for me is that it's not about the government necessarily rewarding. It's about what is the incentive. You talked about, you know, being in a society that's incentive based, but what is the incentive? The incentive is money, but our aspiration is freedom, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Those things, right? But largely, those things are defined and find their source in terms of how we function on a week-in, day-to-day, month-to-month basis. We function that way largely rooted in money.
I think,
and that's the thing, that's the reward.
Yeah.
Is the money. So if money becomes the pure focus for which we are rewarding the constituents of our society, then darn everybody else, forget about anything else. Like, the moralistic fabric of our society is only held together insofar as it's not disturbing the reward of money.
But Chris, I don't know if it's solely money, right? Because when the things I was talking about, you know, freedom, financial security, opportunity. What is money, right? You're saying money it's just for money. People are greedy, but money is literally just a storehold of value. Like, it's just the incentive for your efforts, for your labor. It allows you to transact with other people. I don't think it's like, a lot of people have the opinion that money is evil, but without a dollar bill, there would still be value being transferred between people.
Sure.
And there would still be unequal balances of this value between individuals. So, like, describing the dollar bill as people are just chasing this, well, people are chasing, again, freedom and financial security and just prosperity in general, right? Like, those are the things that money allows people to attain.
Sure. So I feel that money has a place in our society. I don't think that money is evil. My hold up with what I'm seeing in terms of the flushing out of how our economy and society is evolving, richest country of all time ever, and the people who have are getting more and more rich by leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
And the people who don't have, right, aren't earning as much. Part of, you know, I did a sermon a few weeks back at church, and I put up a graphic that showed that, you know, perhaps this is why, you know, middle income, you know, or lower middle income white Americans are angry, because when you account for inflation, they're making a little bit less than what they were making
100%
20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But blacks, Hispanics are making a little bit more than what they were making inflation adjusted. But there's still a huge gap in income.
Yeah.
So, and this is among lower or just above poverty. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's this kind of idea in which money is representing this lofty goal or expectation in terms of how it's defining life for us, right? And what we can buy, what we can pay for, how we're regarded. Like, money is at kind of the center of what is procured for us from this life, right?
Yeah.
Because because I know we'll use language as planners, like money is just fuel, and that's fine to say. But what are we fueling? Are we fueling? Because people have different things that they're fueling. Are we fueling a lawnmower? You know what I'm saying? Like where, that's what you have because, you live down the street or you live with your mom. My neighbor lives with his mom and dependent on his income from mowing people's lawns in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that's how, he lives. That's how he makes a life for himself.
What do you think is your like number one issue with a capitalistic system? And real quick, because I agree, like when you said before, the income and wealth disparity is growing.
Yeah.
And it's getting ridiculous and it's getting disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, like, whose responsibility is it to redistribute wealth, and who gets who gets the power to do that? If it should be done, or even decide if that should happen or shouldn't happen, because again, it's a capitalist society. Some people obviously were born into a better position, right? But most people who are millionaires, they did not come from wealth. And we know this in our profession. The statistics, overwhelmingly, millionaires, people who inherit a lot of wealth and coming from the private wealth area, they lose the money very quickly. 1 generation, 2 generations, it's gone. The vast majority of millionaires, and not the mega rich, not the billionaires. They create the wealth themselves.
So we create a distinction between the high net worth, right? We're talking, 20 million, 5 million or less. Those people tend to be the people that you're talking about. People who have amassed wealth,
like 2 to 5
from
million,
their
2 to 10 million,
from their work, from employment, those different types of things. But these are also people who, over the course of the pandemic, were getting pay raises of 6, 10, 15, 20%, who were able to take advantage of the quiet leaving or the quiet quitting and the resignation era or the great resignation that we talked about, and job hopping. So
I took advantage.
Yeah, I mean,
1,000%.
Woo!
More money, baby.
1,000?
Huh?
1,000%?
1,000%.
You earned 1,000% full, or 1,000% you doubled down on.
Imagine 1,000%. I think I'd be here right now.
Yeah, exactly,
I'd be
right.
in Miami.
Yeah. But these are the this is the class of folks. Even if you're not yet in the boat of ultra high net worth, $20+ million, you've still attained a certain level in which you're commanding certain earning potential and job potential and all those different types of things that kind of make you not part of the majority of people anymore. You're enjoying a different life than what most people enjoy.
Sure.
So when we
think everybody can attain. Like, I guess do you think this is where we drift away? Because I genuinely believe in that every human being has the capability to achieve what they want to achieve and live a good life. Yeah. And I feel like some people think that certain groups can't.
Right. So no, that's not. No, absolutely. So that's not my contention at all. I would say that I have a concern that folks aren't getting the same opportunities to achieve.
Sure.
Based on a number of different factors. So it could be geography. So geography is a huge factor. So just because people are poor, that doesn't mean that they have the same experience or same opportunities. There's going to be a lot of crossover between rural poor, urban poor, but it's still not the same. There's still a number of different complexities that create different situations for those particular peoples, even though there is crossover in being, poor. So capitalism, it favors opportunities for those who already have. Because as with the money, you can create opportunities with money.
Sure.
Access to credit. That's the whole idea of like, we get expansion because of credit. I can borrow from someone who deems me as a qualified borrower.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I qualified? Well, before it may have been your name and coming from the right family. Or it could have just been honor system.
Now it's your history.
But now sometimes it's history.
Like, how have you treated debt before?
How have you treated debt before?
If you have proven in the past that you shouldn't be allowed to borrow, then we're not going to let you have money.
Absolutely.
That's kind of how it works now, I think.
Right. So seemingly that's objective, right? Objective? That there's, yes, that's an objective metric, seemingly. But different people come to knowledge and understanding of that system
100%
in different ways.
Yeah.
So if you're coming from a group of people and from a family that hasn't managed wealth well, and they are in a community of people that also don't necessarily know how to manage wealth. And the other thing too is sometimes who you go to for that is all you're skeptical of that sometimes. Like for instance, there's a large segment of our urban population that is unbanked and doesn't use the traditional banking system.
Yeah. Because
there's a skepticism around, well, they stole my house, or there was redlining in terms of they wouldn't give me a loan for a certain house within a certain district. Or we've seen this, that there was a black husband and a white wife. And so the white wife will stay at home when the appraiser comes to the house, and they'll get a higher appraisal value than they would if the black man was present, right? And so there are people who, when appraisers go to the house, they turn down their photographs because they don't want extra information to inform the appraiser about how this house should be valued.
Yeah.
So my issue with capitalism, not that it isn't the best system in the world, because it is, but my whole thing is, how do we do capitalism?
Yeah.
And how do we do it well? That's the key segment that I'm talking about, is how do we do capitalism better than how we've been doing it? Because clearly it's jacked up right now because of how grossly different people are experiencing this system right now.
Yeah. I think that's fair. And I also think it's super difficult.
Yeah.
To come up with appropriate solutions. I agree 1,000% with you that like underprivileged communities have way less resources, connections. You start behind, right? And I think that, yes, everybody can get ahead, but it seems like the person who starts behind definitely has to run a little faster in the beginning. They have to get a little luckier. They have to, but I can't think about how you can put in a program or systems, because I feel like the government there has been programs. There is, these things, and it doesn't seem to really lift up the desired target. And I don't know all of the programs. I'm not an expert in these government programs and equity and all that stuff, but I feel like there 100% is programs, but it's not doing the job. They're not doing the job that they should.
Right.
And what would a perfect system look like to kind of make those scales a little bit more even?
No, absolutely.
And how do you infiltrate a culture? How do you infiltrate a way of being and change how people operate fundamentally?
Right.
Like, that's even getting to the point where it's invasive. I don't. It just, that's what it seems like would need to be done.
So and that's do we want to allow a system where we're saying, okay, everything is merit-based and everything is incentive-based, and so we're only going to reward you based on what you've worked for, knowing, as you've already talked about, not everybody is starting out on the same level or in the same field. Also knowing that what we generally achieve through a system. Education, we got through an educational system, whether or not that was grade school or college or whatever it is. So there was a teacher. There were books that were written by, an expert. So typically what we amass, there's some type of interdependency that happens in a society where our merit and what we earn is also somewhat based and rooted in and built on top of what others also have done. So when we talk about even this country and how we participate in this country, we have founding fathers. We have our Constitution. All these things are building blocks for our society that basically we are also building further upon those things. So the idea that everything I earned on my own, perhaps is a little bit, there could be more of a nuanced concept of that to say, yes, I worked hard for everything I got, but I didn't earn everything I got on my own. And I think if we hold those things in tension, it can really do us a good service in helping us understand what is our part back to society. Does that make sense?
If you want to elaborate.
So I think how we charge one another in terms of how we participate in our society, in terms of how we incentivize, not just from a job perspective, but then how we give back. What are the opportunities that we're looking to give others who are looking to come up? And being much more open-minded to how we give out opportunities to folks, I think that can help to basically being much more selfless, I guess, in terms of how we live our lives on a daily basis. And that's really what runs capitalism is thinking about the self, my family, my wealth, and accumulating those things for a sense of peace, security, some of the things that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. But I also think that in order to accumulate wealth, which I feel like I'm learning more and more, is that you need, like, in order to accumulate wealth, in order to achieve your goals, in order to kind of move up that socioeconomic ladder, you need other people to help.
Right.
You, right?
100.
You need that network. You need to expand what your current level of thinking and your current level of who you associate with, because not only are you kind of locked out of certain areas of knowledge, certain resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you already, and in order to build that network, in order to have those people have your back and help you, you need to help them, and you need to have their back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's just how society works in general. So you're saying, we need to be more selfless. And I think as you move up the wealth ladder, is like coming 100% from a place of kind of selfless abundance of giving. Right. Because that's the only way you receive.
So I think that,
does that make sense?
Yeah, I think in large ways it's a two-pronged type of deal, in that there's a personal, I think, responsibility that each individual has, that regardless of the wealth that they accumulate, to use it in a responsible way that's beyond themselves. So that would be, to me, the necessary guardrail from a moralistic perspective from people. There's also, can be coupled with that and complementary, and we have some of these ways, programs from the government that could be social welfare programs, but also taxes that help to stimulate the economy, such as the Inflation Reduction Act. Regardless of how you might feel about that act and what it might do, it's still an effort by the government to help support jobs, the economy, and growth of the overall economy for the betterment of people, right? How those things play out within the government or within society is of extreme importance. Like the intentionality of how we go about that, and like understanding how your representatives voted, understanding how they're holding, people in check. You voted for this. Tell me why. And was this good? Like, how do you, this is your particular record. How do you defend your record? And so participating in society and holding folks accountable, not just our own selves accountable with regards to how we personally engage with our community in terms of living modestly, and looking out for others, but also from a government perspective, making sure there's safety nets for people. And now here's a particular thing, is with regards to the safety nets, is that once again, we're not starting from the same spot, even with safety nets in general. So for instance, one of the largest states that gets a whole bunch of welfare money in terms of people who are on welfare is West Virginia.
Yeah.
Which is dominated by folks who are in majority culture, white folks. But there's a narrative in the country about welfare and black people, and that you need to work or you need to have incentive to do this or to do that. And, it's just lazy black people on welfare. Why is that narrative, even out there? Why is that? And that's unfortunate, right? But it's part of what comes out of maintaining the status quo, keeping people in their place. And the fact that there's not this corrective to help to uplift things, to make sure that things are more normalized between all groups.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like
You said a lot
I see
right there.
I see your mind churning. I know. I did say a lot.
Said a lot.
I went on a whole thing.
You did a lot. I said a lot about a lot of different.
What was the thing? What was the thing that was most the thing you wanted to get back into?
I was thinking about like how you were talking about people on welfare.
Yeah.
And I think in general, I was thinking like how trying to step into their shoes,
mm-hmm.
like if I was going through a tough time, or
mm-hmm.
or my life was dependent on the welfare check, and
mm-hmm.
wondering what different situations that all people who require kind
mm-hmm.
of assistance and help, like
from disability to like there's a lot of different reasons.
Tons. I mean, there's a lot of people, and thinking, and it might just be me because I'm just struggling to understand, like if it's a young, able-bodied individual,
mm-hmm.
how you stay in this lower, what I think is the lower rung of income, and
mm-hmm.
there's a lot of issues with, if you have a lower income and things like with how that affects your health,
mm-hmm.
how that affects just your lifestyle,
mm-hmm.
how that affects if you decide to bring kids into the world,
mm-hmm.
what kind of world you're bringing them into.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I step into those shoes, like I just don't have a full understanding. I just can't understand, like from a complete, and I'm not even trying to disparage anybody.
Yeah,
I'm
no, it's
literally
good.
Not understanding how you get stuck there.
It's a disconnect.
Yeah.
And I think I think for me that's the whole point. And I'm glad you said that. I think the whole point is that we are disconnected. That's the thing that feeds the negative aspect of pure free markets and pure capitalism, is that it creates this disconnection between people that disallows folks from understanding and empathizing with people because they aren't exposed. And so, I'll probably have to get into this in a whole nother podcast, is that classism then, because probably what we're actually moving into, if what we aren't already, is really more so a caste system, class systems at least have glass ceilings that you burst through. But caste systems are more like concrete barriers.
I think that's a little
steel
extreme.
walls.
I'm gonna just have to interject. That's a little extreme. That's extreme. I think
With the side,
we're getting flatter. To be honest,
we're getting flatter.
I think at work, I think everywhere I've worked, nobody coming from my the background that I came from and me working up, nobody. I don't feel that overt authority that people who believe they're in a superior class put down on people who they believe are in a lower class. Nowhere you feel that.
So I'm not necessarily talking. I'm not
is.
talking about it from an overt treatment standpoint. I'm talking about it from an affordability and the type of lifestyle I can expect.
But this is
I
the
can
only
expect to have.
country where you can move up. That's what I'm saying in the beginning. My belief, you can move out. Caste would see you cannot move out of the caste. You could do whatever you want in this country. I promise you. There's opportunity for everybody.
So I don't know if you can do whatever you want. You do have to be fortunate to be able to.
Anything.
So you could, but there are people who work hard, but they don't achieve the same levels of success
There's
as other people.
Who came from horrible,
No, I understand.
terrible backgrounds.
But you can
had
work
horrible things happen to them.
But you can work
Oprah, people like Oprah.
Yeah.
And then become a billionaire with her. She's a black woman succeeding in America.
But there are probably people who bust their butt as hard as Oprah bust her butt, but haven't achieved the levels of success that Oprah did.
Yeah, there's going to be a million people that bust their butt.
So what I'm saying is that working hard doesn't necessarily move the needle as much.
It's working hard. It's being smart. It's taking the opportunities. It's learning. It's adapting. Humans are literally not known for. We're known for being smart, but our true characteristic as a human is being adaptable in the environment. And moving through different environments. And adapting to the new situations. Learning the new rules.
I agree.
Right, and then evolving. That's what humans do.
That is what we do. But also, like, we're not in the age of Darwinism anymore, where, strongest survives. Like, that's not the modern concept of how we live. I feel like we're in a both and society. And part of that is because of what we've amassed in terms of wealth affords us the responsibility to create a whole change society that's better for everybody. And part of that responsibility is rooted in the fact that how this country is set up allowed that wealth to be made in the first place. So we can't, like, people who have hundreds of millions, hundreds of billions of dollars can't say, oh, I'm going to take my money and move it to this next country. Or I'm going to, take this and I'm going to move it here or move it there. That's so ridiculous, because the only reason you amass the wealth in the first place is because of the opportunity that this country creates. Now, in help to uplift the society altogether so that there's an overall change and betterment for everyone who's involved, which I think we would all want to see, that everybody is all doing better together. I think that's the society that should be heralded. That's the society that we all would want to move forward in an ideal fashion. And so how we do capitalism really matters. The guardrails that we put into place really matter. Minding about who we're running over with the bus, the capitalism bus, matters. And so if we don't have an intentionality around that, this separation in income, this separation in wealth is going to continue to get worse. Because right now, I don't even see how it does stop, aside from there being both governmental and a new kind of moral ethic that we develop as an American people, as far as giving back and how we stand in the gap, how we advocate, how we empathize, and those different types of things. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree, dude. And it's a bigger issue than can be talked about in a couple minutes.
We're not going to solve all the world's problems.
You got another 3 hours?
And it might take 3 years.
Yeah, I mean.
Sit down.
We were just talking. We didn't. What's the solutions, man?
Hey,
what
man.
You got?
Hey.
Come on now.
I know
you got at least 5 solutions.
Come on. Large macro economic frameworks here, buddy.
No, it's bigger than this. It's bigger. It's
so
very big.
So we got a ways to go, but we just got to be mindful of the part that we're playing in the system, no matter where we are, and make sure that we're intentional about how we live, how we're carrying it forward. So we're gonna wrap it up for today. Jay, man, I had a great time with you. We talked about a lot. You are going to have to be delivered from your Dune opinion.
Oh no, man!
I might not have you back on another podcast, but So make sure you catch us everywhere you find podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music primarily. Go see us, go subscribe, follow, whatever it is. Hit that button, and we'll see you next time.